Enjoy your time here and find peace in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. The year I entered the palace, I had just turned 14. The guard station at the gates gave me a shove, telling me not to dawdle. I turned my head to look outside the palace gates and saw my parents pretending to wipe away tears. I did not look back again, simply following the others ahead of me. My birth name was Amara Lynn. My father used to say I should never have come into this world. But now, I bore the name Clara Q, because Magistrate Thomas Q had purchased me from my father to take the place of his precious daughter. Entering the palace as a maid, I had no idea what the role entailed. Seeing the other young ladies weeping like rain, I thought we were lining up to descend into hell. That was until I saw the palace with its green tiles and red walls, and the exquisite silk garments. Then, the first meal appeared before my eyes. The table was filled with 10 dishes. Even during the Lunar New Year, I had never eaten such a delicious meal. Watching the other girls crying so hard they could not swallow their rice, I only felt they did not know how to cherish this opportunity. Fortunately, there was another young girl beside me who was unlike the others. If she had been crying too, I would have truly lost my appetite. It felt as though I had found a kindred spirit. I picked up a piece of seaweed and placed it in her bowl. She was eating with her head down, paused for a moment, then looked up at me. I guessed she was probably the youngest among us, only about 7 or 8 years old. Looking at her adorable forehead, I smiled and said, "Eat plenty so you can grow up quickly." The little girl nodded, her round eyes still fixed on me. I smiled and asked, "What is your name, and how old are you?" The little girl rolled her eyes and replied in a small voice, "My name is Vanessa Lynn, and I am 7 years old." Her voice still carried an innocent tone, very much like my younger brother, Dorian Lynn, back home. Hearing this, my heart suddenly softened like water. I hurriedly picked up another piece of meat, placed it in her bowl, and said gently, "Be good and eat some meat." Vanessa nodded and went back to eating. Watching her eat so deliciously improved my own appetite. Vanessa and I buried our heads in our bowls, unaware of how much time had passed. The sound of crying in my ears had ceased. When Vanessa and I had eaten our fill, we realized only the two of us remained at the table. At that moment, 2 other maids rushed in. They looked older than me, their faces full of panic. "This servant greets my little ancestor." One maid hurried over to hug Vanessa and said, "Why have you run off to this place again?" Vanessa obediently let the maid hold her and said with her small mouth, "Nessa is hungry." The maid coaxed her, "There are delicious pastries in the palace. Princess, be good and follow this servant back to the palace to eat." I had not yet put down my chopsticks when they fell to the ground. I had never seen such a scene before. Before coming to the palace, Magistrate Thomas had told me some of the rules. A maid could never sit at the same table as a princess. The maid holding Vanessa glanced at me, her eyes looking as if she were staring at a dead person. She spoke in a voice as cold as ice, "Call Matron Constance here." I was so frightened I trembled uncontrollably. 50 strikes, she said to a eunuch who had just entered. After that, she glanced at me one more time and prepared to leave with Vanessa. Just then, Vanessa turned her head to look at me and said in a melodious voice, "Sister, you come back with me too." My legs went weak. I dared not accept being called sister. Vanessa led me back to the Jade Spring Palace. This incident quickly spread among the maids. Everyone said I was so lucky that even dog droppings helped me enter the palace. On the very first day, I was signed to serve in the Jade Spring Palace, the easiest place to be. That was what they thought. But I did not think so. "Sister, what is your name? How old are you?" Vanessa mimicked me and asked back, her voice still childish. I felt as though my head were about to fall off my neck. I stole a glance at Matron Constance, the maid beside Vanessa. Her gaze was still cold as ice. I trembled and replied, "Your Highness, this servant does not dare accept such a title. This servant's name is Clara, and I am 14 years old." Vanessa rolled her eyes and turned to ask Matron Constance, "Matron, what does dare not accept mean?" The matron whispered something into Vanessa's ear. Vanessa's eyes immediately widened. "But Nessa likes sister." Vanessa's small, sweet voice rang out. My heart itched restlessly. When I was sold by my father to Magistrate Thomas, my 4-year-old brother Dorian had said the exact same thing. Vanessa's words were indeed very effective. From then on, Matron Constance no longer made things difficult for me, though she always appeared guarded against me. Later, I was assigned to be a cleaning maid in the palace. During my first few days at the Jade Spring Palace, I heard them say that Vanessa had fallen and hit her head when she was 4 years old. Since then, her mind had not developed further. The reason for her fall was unknown, and no one ever mentioned it. The more I thought about it, the more my heart ached. How badly must such a small child have fallen to be unable to grow up? While I was deep in thought, a small hand suddenly tugged at my clothes. I looked down to see Vanessa standing there, her face as lovely as carved jade. She whispered, "Sister, let us go find brother." Her voice was tiny, her round eyes sparkling. I squatted down and whispered back, "Find which brother?" Vanessa pulled me, sneaking past the maids and eunuchs, then led me through rows of corridors and gardens within the palace. Finally, we stopped in front of a blooming lotus pond. The scenery before us was astonishingly beautiful, but there was no sign of the brother Vanessa had mentioned. What worried me even more was that I did not remember the way back. I sat with Vanessa in the pavilion waiting for a long time, but still no one came. When Vanessa rubbed her belly and told me that, "Nessa is hungry," I felt hungry too. I asked the princess if she remembered the way back. She rolled her eyes and shook her head. I thought to myself, I knew it. Just as I was rolling up my trousers, holding my skirt with one hand and a lotus flower with the other, intending to climb out of the pond, I suddenly heard Vanessa call out, "Brother, sister has fallen into the water." Looking up, I saw a handsome man dressed in a long black robe standing in the pavilion. The black robe only accentuated his jade-like face. I had never met such a beautiful man. Having just set foot on the bank, I suddenly slipped, and both I and the lotus flower fell back into the pond with a splash. "Brother," she fell into the water. I struggled to stand up. Hearing Vanessa's words, I just wanted to bury myself in the mud. When I managed to climb ashore and walk to the pavilion, Vanessa tried to run to me, but was lifted up by the man with one hand. He furrowed his handsome brows, looked me up and down, and said, "Who are you?" "The emperor is the one who wears yellow robes." I had heard the maids say that Vanessa was the emperor's sister. I glanced at the man in black before me, based on the fact that Vanessa called me sister. This man certainly could not be the emperor. "Brother, Matron Constance would not let Nessa go find brother, so Nessa secretly led Sister Clara here to find you," Vanessa said. The man raised an eyebrow and looked at me once more. "Maid Clara." His gaze seemed to question, apart from himself, did he have another sister? I could only sigh in my heart, understanding his feelings at this moment very well. "My lord, do not be concerned. This servant will pretend I never heard this address of brother. Please also pretend the princess's address of sister never existed." Vanessa was not a child who liked to cling to people, except for me and the man before me. This was already the third time Vanessa had led me to the lotus pond to meet this person. Truth be told, if Vanessa did not have the mind of a 4-year-old, I would have suspected she had intentions of matchmaking. Vanessa said she had known this man since she was small. Seeing how he could freely enter and exit the palace, I guessed he was probably a guard. Each time, he would escort Vanessa and me back to the Jade Spring Palace without saying another word, proving his status was not low. "Brother, is this a sister or a sister-in-law? If she is a sister, can a sister become a sister-in-law?" Vanessa said as she squeezed a clay doll, speaking words that nearly made me choke. My hands were covered in mud, so I could not cover my mouth in time. I could only cough dryly until I could barely breathe. Vanessa blinked and asked me, "Sister, what is wrong?" I glanced at the guard beside me, my face flushing red, and the coughing fit became even more violent. Just then, the guard, who had been observing coldly until now, stepped forward and gently patted my back. Amidst Vanessa's words, I only felt the hand on my back burning hot. "Nessa, who taught you to say sister-in-law?" The guard's voice was clear and cool, very pleasant to the ear. I immediately stopped coughing. Vanessa was a simple child. If no one had taught her, how would she know what the word sister-in-law meant? Vanessa looked down at the clay doll in her hand, then pursed her lips as if thinking about something. "Daisy told me." Vanessa replied softly. "The flower said that if brother has a sister-in-law, he will no longer need Nessa. Only Daisy will always be with Nessa. But I do not want brother to abandon Nessa. If sister becomes sister-in-law, brother and sister will not abandon Nessa, right?" As she spoke, large, round tears slowly fell onto the clay doll like drops of scalding water falling straight into my heart, causing me pain. I hurriedly embraced Vanessa, just as I used to comfort my little brother when he was small. "Princess, be good. Princess, be good. This servant will never leave the princess. This servant will stay with the princess forever." Vanessa lifted her head from my arms, her round eyes glistening with tears as she looked at me and asked, "So, will you be Nessa's sister-in-law?" Seeing my silence, Vanessa's tears seemed ready to spill over again. I glanced at the guard standing nearby. He raised an eyebrow, seemingly having no intention of helping me out of this situation. The heat that had just subsided on my face flared up once again. In my heart, I sighed, thinking that deceiving a child would not matter. Later, I just needed to explain it to the guard. Thinking this, I used my elbow, which I had wiped clean, to gently wipe away the tears on Vanessa's cheeks. Then I coaxed her, "Princess, be good. This servant will do whatever the princess wants." Children are so easy to coax, just like how I used to coax my brother when he was small. Perhaps tired from crying, Vanessa soon drifted into a light sleep in the guard's arms, sleeping very soundly. The guard carried Vanessa and walked with me back to the Jade Spring Palace. I whispered, "My lord, those words just now were only to coax the princess. Please be generous and forgive me." As I spoke, I felt my face burning again. The guard suddenly stopped, looked at me, and quietly replied, "Amen." I breathed a sigh of relief. As long as he did not blame me, it was fine. After several meetings, I knew that this guard not only held great power, but also had a very cold personality. I timidly asked, "My lord, may this servant ask for your name and where you are currently serving?" I had intended to ask the other maids, but every time Vanessa secretly led me out, she let no one know. Surely, apart from Matron Constance, no one knew of this. But Matron Constance was out of the question. I feared her the most. Every time I saw her, I tried to stay far away. The guard stopped, raising an eyebrow to look at me. His gaze seemed to imply that I truly intended to become Vanessa's sister-in-law. I immediately forced 2 awkward laughs and whispered, "If it is inconvenient, then never mind." The guard continued walking and said, "At the Celestial Palace." After speaking, he continued forward. I stood dazed on the spot. Although I was just a lowly maid who had never experienced much of the world, I knew that the Celestial Palace was the residence of the Emperor. It was no wonder I always felt he was full of arrogance. If I were a guard at the Celestial Palace, I would be even more arrogant than him. Vanessa's head maid, named Lucia, had just been sent to the Imperial dungeon. Matron Constance told me this. She also said I no longer needed to be a cleaning maid, but would replace Lucia to serve by Vanessa's side. Why Lucia was sent to the Imperial dungeon, I did not know clearly, but the power of this guard, Lord Chen, was truly immense. With just one word from Vanessa, a head maid had been taken away so easily. I packed my simple luggage and followed Matron Constance, deciding in my heart that I must try to please Lord Harrison Chen to avoid one day being sent to the Imperial dungeon because of a slip of the tongue. With that thought in mind, when I met Lord Harrison Chen again, I dared not stop smiling. Vanessa asked, "Sister, are you happy when you meet brother because you are about to become brother's wife?" The smile I was holding on my lips suddenly stiffened. Seeing the expectant look in Vanessa's eyes, I glanced at Lord Chen, my heart pounding, and nodded slightly. Vanessa was still young, perhaps she did not clearly understand the danger of my current situation, nor did she know the reason why Lucia had disappeared. Today, Vanessa spoke less than usual because she was engrossed in painting, drawing very intently and seriously. I stood between Vanessa and Lord Harrison, feeling that this was a suitable time to curry favor with him. I began, "Surely the work at the Celestial Palace is very arduous, is it not, my lord?" I tried to find a topic that sounded understanding and approachable. Lord Harrison did not look up at me even once, only turning a page of his book and giving a soft, Every time I followed Vanessa to this pavilion to find Lord Chen, he was always busy with books or writing. A guard who loved books so much, it was no wonder he could hold a position at the Celestial Palace. I thought for a long time, feeling that perhaps Lord Harrison was not interested in the topic I had just mentioned. Therefore, I immediately changed direction. I wonder if my lord already has a family at home. Before entering the palace, I often heard people discussing this matter. This time, Lord Harrison did not continue reading. I saw him slightly raise an eyebrow and look up, then glance at Vanessa, who was intently painting. When he turned back to look at me, there was a fleeting hint of a smile in his eyes. Soon he replied. Since I had known Lord Harrison, I had never seen him show such an expression. It was like a deity stepping out of a dream. Soon meant what? Could it be that his family had already arranged a young lady for him? I wondered what kind of young lady would be worthy of a figure like Lord Chen. I was pulled back to the present when Vanessa announced she had finished the painting. Looking at the drawing, I realized it was an image of a woman and a man holding hands with a child. I smiled and praised. The princess draws so beautifully. These words were mainly for Lord Chen to hear, as a way to silently affirm that I was different from ordinary girls. Vanessa explained the painting. This is brother, this is sister. You will become Vanessa's sister-in-law, and this is Vanessa. Hearing this, I nearly choked. Vanessa draws truly beautifully, Lord Harrison said, his hand gently patting Vanessa's head. His comment sounded so sincere, not as if he were speaking just to please a child. In my heart, I could not help but admire him. I loved Vanessa because she resembled my brother at home, but Lord Chen treated Vanessa as if she were his own sister. Lord Harrison was truly an incredibly kind person. Magistrate Thomas sent a letter into the palace. He did not treat me badly, but this event confused me. Holding the letter in my hand, I did not pay much attention to it until I returned to my room in the evening and slowly opened it. I did not expect the content of the letter to shock me. My hand trembled, and the flame from the candle immediately licked at the paper. I hurriedly extinguished it, but by the time the fire was out, only a corner of the 2 pages remained. The flame was gone, leaving only 8 words: my son, we have moved away. I collapsed by the table, a pain beyond words rising in my heart. Sister, as soon as you turn 21, I will come find you. This was what my brother had sobbed to me when I left. He was the only person in this world who still cared about me. Yet now, he was only 4 years old and could not wait for me until I was 21. I silently opened the wardrobe and took out the small shirt of my brother that I had carried with me for so long. I did not know where I should go, nor did I know where I could go. I just walked aimlessly, clutching the shirt. I did not know how much time had passed until I bumped into someone. I slowly looked up, but my vision was blurred, and I could not see anything clearly. I wanted to apologize, but when I opened my mouth, no sound came out. It was then I understood that when one is in extreme grief, one truly cannot utter a word. Is everything all right? A voice rang out, accompanied by a handkerchief gently falling onto my face. It soaked up my tears. The coolness made my heart unable to hold back any longer. If crying loudly would lead to beheading, then let them behead me. I could not see anymore. I hugged the person in front of me and cried shatteringly, cried until it felt as if my heart and liver were being torn apart. My heart seemed to have had a piece cut out by someone. I thought perhaps nothing in this life could be more painful than this. I did not remember how I returned. When I woke up, Vanessa and Matron Constance were standing by the bed. Seeing me open my eyes, Vanessa immediately put her hand on my forehead, breathing a sigh of relief like an adult. Finally, the fever is gone. I recalled that every time I had a fever, my brother would show the exact same expression. I tried to sit up and hugged Vanessa tightly, intending to call out Princess. Vanessa gently patted my back, coaxing me. Sister, be good. Sister, be good. Nessa is always here with you. Do not be afraid. Vanessa coaxed gently. Her voice was childish but made me feel incredibly at ease. I did not know when I fell asleep again. When I woke up, it was already afternoon. My body felt stronger, as if I had never been ill. Looking around, I discovered my brother's shirt was no longer in my hand. I hurriedly opened the wardrobe and saw it folded neatly inside. If it were not for the handkerchief placed upon it, I would have thought last night was just a dream. I picked up the handkerchief and saw it was plain, with no special markings. Matron Constance walked into the room carrying a cup of tea and placed it on the table. Is your body feeling better? I nodded slightly, put the handkerchief back in the wardrobe, and walked over to sit by the table. Matron Constance poured me a cup of water and pushed it forward. There are many unsatisfactory things in this world. One's own body is the most important. Do not let your master worry. Matron Constance did not ask me what had happened. Her voice was no longer as strict as usual but much gentler. I lowered my head, my eyes stinging, lifted the teacup, took a sip, and nodded slightly. Here, I could not tell anyone that my brother had passed away, for I was Clara, daughter of Magistrate Thomas. I had no brother. In a blink, I had been in the palace for half a year, and it had been 3 months since my brother left this world. Watching Vanessa flying a kite, I thought that if I never left the palace in this life, just staying by her side would be a very good thing. Sister, brother is coming back soon. Vanessa leaned on my shoulder, her voice soft as I wiped the sweat for her. I heard that Lord Harrison had been out of the palace for 2 months, so we had not gone to the pavilion to meet him for a long time. I nodded slightly and held Vanessa's hand. Princess, Quickly follow this servant back to the palace to change clothes. It is already autumn, getting colder every day. The princess has sweated a lot. Do not catch a cold. On the way back with Vanessa, we coincidentally met Matron Constance walking towards us. Matron Constance glanced at me once, then curtsied to Vanessa. After hesitating for a moment, she whispered, "He has returned." The sentence was short and lacked context, but Vanessa in my hand immediately jumped up. "Brother is back." Matron Constance nodded in confirmation. Since I fell ill, Matron Constance's attitude towards me had become much softer. Although in the eyes of outsiders, my current status and hers were almost equal, I was still somewhat afraid of Matron Constance. Deep down, I knew there was still a large gap between us. For instance, I never knew about Lord Harrison's whereabouts. Vanessa did not listen to me, and did not return to the palace to change clothes. She pulled me and ran straight to the lotus pond. I intended to tell her that Lord Chen had just returned and perhaps would not come to the pond immediately, so going back to change clothes would not be too late. But Vanessa held my hand tightly. As she pulled me along, I could only focus on watching my feet, fearing she might trip. Luckily, there were no obstacles, but we slammed into a person. I hurriedly squatted down to check Vanessa's forehead. Seeing nothing serious, I breathed a sigh of relief. Really like bumping into people. A clear voice rang in my ear. I looked up and saw a refined face. Perhaps because I had not seen him for 2 or 3 months, Lord Harrison seemed even more handsome than before. I hurriedly stood up and curtsied gently. It was this servant's carelessness. "Please punish me, Lord Chen." Over the past 2 months I had learned etiquette from Matron Constance. Now, I surely had enough manners. Lord Harrison seemed to notice my change. He stood silently for a moment without speaking. Just then, Vanessa threw herself forward to hug Lord Chen. She exclaimed, brother has been gone for so long." Sister and Nessa both missed brother very much. I clearly saw Lord Chen's brows raise slightly. Although my heart was full of anxiety, I still had to maintain a polite smile. "Is that so? Sister missed me too." Lord Harrison picked Vanessa up and asked, his gaze turning towards me. Could I say no? Clearly not, because Vanessa had firmly confirmed it with a sweet nod. Of course. Sister all missed brother, right sister? Although my heart trembled, on the surface, I maintained a natural appearance, simply nodding and smiling in response. "That is right," I replied. But in my heart, I could not help wondering that when Lord Chen took a wife, would the madam be easy to get along with? Would she storm into the palace and cause trouble? Lord Harrison chuckled softly, his hand gently touching the tip of Vanessa's nose. "Why are you sweating so much? Quickly go back to the palace and change clothes lest you catch a cold." Lord Chen's voice sounded very happy. Clearly, his mood was very good, which made me feel relieved too. Since entering the palace half a year ago, I had heard vague rumors about the emperor. It was said he ascended the throne young and went through many hardships, so his temperament and methods were very tough. In the palace, no one was not afraid of him, especially the maids at the Celestial Palace. When meeting him, they had to be careful even when breathing. I had never seen the emperor's appearance, but perhaps the rumors about his cruelty were true. Vanessa was still young, and her mind was not fully developed. Yet, for the past half-year, I had never seen the emperor come to visit his only sister. Lord Harrison, although calm on the surface, genuinely cared for and loved Vanessa. Following behind Lord Chen, I thought how good it would be if he were Vanessa's real brother. If that were truly the case, and his family had not chosen anyone for him, then being married to him would be a wonderful thing. That way Vanessa would be by my side forever. In a few days it would be Vanessa's 7th birthday. The Jade Spring Palace was filled with a joyful atmosphere. I had saved half a year's wages and asked Daisy Clue to go out and buy a rattle drum for me as a birthday gift. I was sure Vanessa would like it very much. Last year I found an old rattle drum on the street. My brother happily kept it, refusing to let go even when sleeping. Now, being at the Jade Spring Palace, I was considered someone with a bit of authority. Daisy laughed and refused when I offered the money. Miss Clara is too polite. Working for Miss Clara is this servant's blessing. Having been in the palace for more than half a year, although I did not understand all the complexities, I gradually got used to the tricks here. Daisy was a very subtle person. It was only because I was currently in this position that she did not dare accept the money. But if one day I no longer held this position, things might not be as they are now. It was not that I had too much money and did not know how to use it, but Vanessa's birthday gift had to be something bought with my own hands. Only then would it truly be my gift. I pushed the money back into Daisy's hand, pretending to be annoyed. Do not give it back. Does it look like I lack these few coins? You must buy the exact rattle drum I like, otherwise I will be unhappy. This time, Daisy did not return the money. She just smiled and said she would certainly satisfy Miss Clara, then left. Indeed, Daisy was very skillful in her work. The rattle drum she bought made me very satisfied. It even seemed she had added her own money. I liked this drum very much, and Vanessa would surely love it too. I noted Daisy's kindness in my heart. Next time, I would find an opportunity to thank her properly. The second day of the 12th lunar month was Vanessa's birthday. Early in the morning, I woke up with Matron Constance to wait for Vanessa to rise. I heard the Emperor had organized a banquet in the royal gardens to celebrate Vanessa's birthday, so Matron Constance and I would follow her to the banquet. This was the first time since I entered the palace that I saw the Emperor make a move regarding Vanessa. No wonder Vanessa was closer to Lord Harrison than anyone else. In such circumstances anyone would be. Even so, Vanessa never showed dissatisfaction. Just hearing that there would be much delicious food tonight, she was already extremely excited. I had never been to the royal gardens, but seeing Vanessa's familiarity, she must have been here many times. In the garden, black velvet lanterns were decorated very exquisitely. Clearly, the person arranging this had been meticulous. One could see immediately that this was the style Vanessa preferred. This surprised me. It turned out the Emperor did not detest her as I had thought. A bit of curiosity about this Emperor rose in my heart. But no matter how curious, I dared not look up directly when he sat in his position. Today is Vanessa's birthday. This is just a family banquet, no need for formalities. A clear voice rang out from above, seemingly directed at the princes and nobles sitting below. I did not understand why that voice gave me a familiar feeling, as if I had heard it somewhere before. I glanced at Vanessa. She paid no attention to the Emperor's words and had already begun to eat intently. Looking at Matron Constance, I saw she bowed her head so low it seemed she wanted to burrow into the ground. Her eyes stole glances at the princes and nobles. Indeed, the Emperor was a very solemn person. All of them were like frightened quails, not daring to lift their heads. If I met the Emperor later, I would certainly stay far away. I never thought a banquet could end so quickly. When Vanessa put down her chopsticks, I saw the princes and nobles all show relief, as if they had just escaped pressure. They took turns coming up to give gifts to Vanessa and bowed to the Emperor before leaving. Today, following Matron Constance's instructions, Vanessa behaved very properly, without any action exceeding etiquette. Looking at her, no outsider would think her mind was only 4 years old. But when the officials had dispersed, Vanessa returned to her original childish appearance. She hugged the received gifts tightly, her face radiant, only wishing to quickly return to the Jade Spring Palace to store them. She was so engrossed she forgot to bow to the Emperor. I walked behind, secretly worried until we arrived at the Jade Spring Palace and still saw no one coming to punish us. Perhaps the Emperor was not as heartless and ungrateful as I had thought. Sister, what is this? Vanessa's eyes sparkled like stars in the sky. She held the rattle drum I had just given her, asking with delight. The drum was made of tiger skin. I had even sewn on ears and a tail, looking incredibly adorable. I held her hand and twirled the rattle drum. The drum face emitted a clear sound. This is called a rattle drum. Does the princess like it? Vanessa, who had just sat on the bed, immediately jumped up in joy. I like it. I could not help smiling. I knew she would like it, but seeing her so excited, my heart felt as sweet as if I had just drunk honey. After letting her play for a while, the sound of the rattle drum echoing through the room, I took it back and placed it in the box by the bed. Then I said gently, Princess, it is late. Let us play again tomorrow. Vanessa obediently lay down and pulled the blanket over herself. Seeing her so good, I thought to myself I would have to thank Daisy properly later. I had just closed the room door when I turned around and encountered Lord Harrison. It seemed he had just finished bathing. His hair was let down behind him, still glistening with drops of water. The air around him carried a faint, indescribable fragrance. I hurriedly looked around, not knowing what to do. I looked around and saw no one, breathing a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the Jade Spring Palace had few people passing by. I stepped forward to curtsy to Lord Chen. He nodded slightly, then took a small, exquisite box from his sleeve. I forgot to give this to Nessa, he said. I did not think anything was unusual and intended to reach out to receive the box. But suddenly, I realized Lord Harrison's outer robe was slightly open. It was already winter. Having just bathed and not dressing tightly, he would easily catch a cold. When I realized I was holding the lapel of Lord Chen's robe, I only wished I could chop off my own hand right then. This servant was only afraid my lord would catch a cold, I said, my fingers trembling uncontrollably. Do you believe that? Lord Harrison raised an eyebrow slightly, looking down at the hand clutching his robe until it was distorted. I let out a small yelp, hurriedly jumped back, and intended to turn and run. Clara. Lord Chen's gentle voice rang out, carrying a hint of a smile. I turned back, my face showing misery, only hoping he would not send me to the Imperial dungeon. You forgot to take Nessa's gift, he said. That night, after accidentally losing my manners with Lord Chen, I returned to my room and dreamed of him. That made me think I was truly like a toad wanting to eat swan meat. The more I thought so, the more frequently dreams of him appeared, and what happened in the dreams became increasingly strange. I thought I had fallen ill, and the illness was not light. Therefore, when the royal physician came to check Vanessa's pulse, I could not help but ask curiously, "Physician, is there any medicine to cure the illness of dreaming too much?" Physician Hua often came to the Jade Spring Palace 2 or 3 times a month, so he was quite familiar with me. Hearing me say this, he prescribed a remedy for insomnia and excessive dreaming. The medicine had just been brewed when I heard shocking news. The emperor had an interest in a maid in the Jade Spring Palace. Although I knew this news was probably not true, I felt relieved, thinking I was not the toad wanting to eat swan meat anymore. No matter how powerful Lord Harrison was, how could he compare to the emperor? Compared to the maid who dared to dream of the emperor, I was willing to yield the position of toad to her. But the truth proved the rumor that the emperor liked a maid in the Jade Spring Palace was absolutely correct. The emperor had bestowed many precious items upon the Jade Spring Palace. Among them were a few items that, at a glance, I knew were not for Vanessa. I stole a glance at Matron Constance beside me, who seemed very calm. Suddenly, I remembered her shy appearance at the banquet that day. It turned out the emperor had his eyes on Matron Constance. Her beauty was indeed outstanding in the Jade Spring Palace. Being favored by the emperor now was not surprising to me. The eunuch delivering the rewards looked at us with a meaningful gaze, which made me even more convinced that the person the emperor had noticed was Matron Constance. If Matron Constance were promoted in the future, could I not rely on her to rise up as well? Thinking this, I immediately sent a meaningful glance toward Matron Constance. "Sister, you really know how to act." Matron Constance looked at me with disgust, her eyes sweeping over the bowl of medicine the royal physician had prescribed for me. She smiled contemptuously and said, "Have you drunk so much medicine you have become confused? Do not pretend. Surely you are very happy in your heart, are you not?" I smiled at her, looking at her as if I were gazing at a golden Buddha statue. By evening, while I was brewing medicine, I suddenly realized something was wrong. Did the emperor truly have eyes for Matron Constance? If not, why would he suddenly bestow so many gifts? This meant it was not Matron Constance who was delusional, nor was she the toad wanting to eat swan meat. In this Jade Spring Palace, only I was that fool. Looking at the fire burning under the medicine pot, I suddenly felt my heart fill with a chilling coldness. Fortunately, I still had Vanessa, the child who always stood by my side. The emperor bestowed many gifts, but most of them were given to me by Vanessa. "Sister, Nessa cannot use all these things. You take them." Vanessa pointed at the pile of fragrances, jewels, and silks brought into the room, speaking innocently. Of course, I knew the child could not use them, but these things were not mine. I glanced at Matron Constance behind Vanessa, then looked at the pile of precious items in front of me. I gritted my teeth and said, "These things should be for Matron Constance to use." Matron Constance, who had been silent until now, shook her head and said, "I cannot use them either." "You cannot use them, but you must accept them. These are what the emperor bestowed upon you." I looked at her, thinking to myself, impossible. How could a young person like her not like the things that all women love? Could it be she thought there would be even better things in the future, so she temporarily did a favor by giving them to her closest sister? That night, I smiled even in my sleep. In my dream, one hand hugged gold, silver, and jewels tightly, while the other hugged Lord Harrison. It could not be more comfortable. But when I woke up, all feelings of joy vanished immediately. Even seeing that pile of precious gifts in the room, I could not be happy. Because even with those rare and splendid things in hand, I remained a green toad unable to reach the swan. My reputation in the Jade Spring Palace grew day by day, probably because everyone knew Matron Constance would soon be taken away. In the future, apart from Vanessa, I would be the most senior person in this palace. However, on the 6th day of the 12th lunar month, a basin of cold water was poured straight onto my face. We here Maid Clara of the Jade Spring Palace is dignified, gentle, diligent, and mild-mannered. Her demeanor is graceful, her virtue complete, worthy of being promoted to the rank of Consort Lin. I knelt on the ground. Although I was wearing thick clothes, I felt my whole body freezing like ice. Congratulations, Consort Lin. Congratulations, your ladyship. The eunuch delivering the decree, seeing I had no reaction, raised his voice. My whole body trembled, and I hurriedly bowed to give thanks. I could not understand where the emperor heard I was gentle, diligent, dignified, and virtuous. Nor did I understand why he titled me Consort Lin and not Consort Q. I only knew that from now on, I could never marry Lord Harrison. Not long ago, I was secretly asking Lord Chen if he intended to take a concubine. Now, I did not even have the chance to be his concubine. Not only could I not marry Lord Chen, but I was also unsure if my life could be preserved. The 6th of the 12th month is indeed a good day. The emperor truly has a heart for your ladyship. The eunuch continued to speak words of congratulation. I just smiled forcedly, reluctantly accepting the imperial decree, thinking to myself, how much heart could the emperor have? Surely he was just bewitched by someone's lies, causing him to act on a whim. Perhaps matron Constance had stepped forward to give the eunuch some silver, so the eunuch led the maids and other eunuchs away from the Jade Spring Palace. I looked at Matron Constance with her calm face, while Vanessa's eyes darted back and forth. A feeling rose in my heart that everything was certainly not simple. Compared to Matron Constance, I could never be the one favored by the emperor. But before I could think carefully about what was happening, another group arrived to prepare for my departure from the Jade Spring Palace. As the only concubine in the palace at that time, walking into the Pure Heart Palace, I could not help feeling anxious. I did not even know what the emperor looked like, yet now I had become the mistress of the Pure Heart Palace. This was hard for anyone to believe. What was even harder to believe was that on that very night, the emperor summoned me to serve him. This made me even more curious. I did not know what kind of person the emperor was. If one said he was lecherous, there had never been any concubines in the harem before. But if one said he was ascetic, on the very first day I entered the Pure Heart Palace, I was summoned. Vanessa stayed with me until very late before agreeing to leave. Before she left, I held her hand, tears in my eyes, and said, "Princess, if tonight I accidentally do something to displease the emperor, please plead for me for my sake." Vanessa did not understand my meaning, initially happy, but after hearing me speak, she hugged me and cried loudly. Only when the older maid came to remind her did Vanessa agree to follow Matron Constance away. After that, I had to listen to the older maid lecture me on etiquette when serving the emperor. Seeing the trembling hands of the eunuch lifting my palanquin, I understood that the emperor truly terrified the entire celestial palace. It was not just a rumor. When I was gently placed onto the large bed, everyone immediately withdrew. I curled up in the blanket, feeling uneasy. Although I had listened to the older maid explain for a whole hour, I still was not clear on how this was to be done. Truth be told, I did not want to serve him, but I wanted to lose my life even less. Now I understood why young girls entering the palace cried so miserably. Because once inside, one could not even govern one's own heart. I did not know how much time had passed when a familiar scent wafted into my nose. I turned my head and saw Lord Harrison walking toward me. Just like that night, his long robe draped loosely, his hair still holding a few drops of water. Lord Chen must have just finished bathing. The surrounding atmosphere was slightly damp. The light from the pale yellow candle shone, making him look like an immortal descending from the sky. I suddenly snapped awake, realizing my current situation. My face immediately burned hot. Unable to control myself, I hurriedly burrowed into the blanket. Lord Chen, I am so scared. I was so scared I dared not look at him, nor did I know what to say. As soon as I opened my mouth, tears welled up. At first, I did not think much, but when Lord Harrison appeared, I suddenly felt so aggrieved. Clearly, initially, I only wanted to marry Lord Chen to stay by Vanessa's side forever. Now, even though I had become the emperor's consort, I could still be with Nessa, but why was my heart filled with such injustice? I only wanted to be married to Lord Chen. But now, not only was that impossible, but he had also caught me lying on the dragon bed. In the dim light, I saw Lord Harrison raise an eyebrow slightly and smile gently. He quickly walked to the bedside and lifted the blanket covering my face. The distance between his face and mine was so close. I could clearly feel his warm breath on my face. At this moment, I no longer paid attention to my heart beating wildly in my chest. I hurriedly blurted out, "My lord, go quickly. If the emperor sees, I have no family left, so dying does not matter, but I do not want to implicate you, my lord." Lord Harrison chuckled softly. Only then did I see that when he smiled, there were two small dimples at the corners of his mouth. He gently touched the tip of my nose. I heard him say, "I am not the lord, I am the emperor." I had never heard that the emperor had a twin brother. I stared at him wide-eyed, thinking he was joking. But no, Lord Harrison was not joking. He was truly the emperor, because the whole night he lay beside me, no one came to drag him out and execute him for the crime of deceiving the sovereign. Watching him put on the bright yellow dragon robe I had only heard about, I felt as if I were falling into a dream. Everything became illusory and distant, with no sense of reality. "Are you not? Should you not be surnamed Ling?" I tremblingly clutched the blanket and whispered. According to logic, he should bear the surname Ling. The eunuchs dressing the emperor, hearing my words, were startled, their hands shaking. I bit my lip tight, understanding that what I had just said was truly against etiquette. But the person before me was not only the high and mighty emperor whom everyone feared but also Lord Harrison, who had smiled gently at me. The emperor, Dominic Ling, looked at me with a fleeting smile, his eyes overflowing with gentleness. He let the eunuchs adjust his clothes, then whispered, "Sleep a little longer." And so, I truly fell asleep. When I woke up, I saw Daisy, the servant who came with me from the Jade Spring Palace, standing by my side waiting. Seeing me wake up, she approached and said, "Your ladyship has risen. This servant has brought your clothes. Let this servant assist your ladyship in changing." Only then did I suddenly realize I was still lying on the dragon bed without a single piece of cloth covering me. My ears immediately burned red. Daisy was someone I brought from the Jade Spring Palace because I saw she knew how to work. But now, seeing her help me change while frowning and stealing glances at the dragon bed, I knew exactly what she was thinking. Last night, the emperor did nothing to me. The things the nanny taught me did not happen at all. Daisy looked at me, her eyes revealing a hint of surprise. I immediately started, hurriedly explaining. "It is not like that. The emperor did not touch me last night. Truly, he did not." I had been worried all night, fearing someone would rush in to arrest Lord Harrison and execute him for deceiving the sovereign. I did not know if it was because I was too tense that I fell asleep. Of course, Daisy did not know why the emperor did not touch me, so she only frowned more. When Daisy took me back to the Pure Heart Palace, I saw Vanessa had eaten almost all the plate of pastries in front of her. Seeing me return, she smiled brightly and jumped up, but then hesitated, bowed her head, and timidly looked up at me bit by bit. I was still angry with her, but seeing that pitiful appearance, my heart immediately softened. I walked over, took her hand, and sat down beside her. I looked at Vanessa and asked softly, "Why did the princess not tell me? Not tell me that Lord Harrison is the emperor, causing me to lose my manners so many times?" Vanessa glanced at me, then immediately bowed her head. A moment later, I saw her ears turn red. "It was because of brother. Brother said if I told you, you would not be able to be Nessa's sister-in-law anymore." Her small voice rang in my ears like thunder, making my head dizzy. Vanessa gently held my hand, her tone gentle. "Sister-in-law, from now on you are Nessa's sister-in-law. You will not abandon Nessa." How could I abandon the princess?" I answered unconsciously. Hearing me speak, Vanessa happily jumped into my arms, laughing radiantly. "Sister-in-law is the best." Only then did I realize she had changed her address. She no longer called me sister but sister-in-law, making my face flush red. When the eunuch announced that the emperor was coming for the noon meal at the Pure Heart Palace, I was building a snowman with Vanessa. The emperor has not had a full noon meal like this for a long time. Consort Lin is truly blessed, Eunuch Dexter said, his eyes crinkling. His words sounded incredibly pleasant to me. I did not know why the emperor did not eat his noon meal properly, and Vanessa did not know either. Hearing the eunuch's announcement, Vanessa and I both abandoned the snow pile, our hearts only thinking about what dishes we would eat soon. On this point, Vanessa and I shared a surprising similarity. But when Dominic Ling saw the table, filled with 20 dishes, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. I could only give an awkward laugh. The princess is at a growing age. I could not utter the sentence that followed because out of those 20 dishes, 16 were chosen by me. I wondered if the emperor would use the excuse that I ate too much to banish me to the cold palace. On that very day, the rumor that the emperor did not touch me on the first night spread throughout the palace. It was nothing strange. The emperor had never touched any woman before, let alone a mere maid. Someone whispered that she just relied on the princess's favor to climb onto the dragon bed. That is right, the princess is always clinging to her. Who knows what kind of bewildering potion she gave the princess? The whispers of the maids behind the fake rock made my heart skip a beat. I took a long breath but still could not calm down, nearly fainting on the spot. Daisy was so angry she rolled up her sleeves, saying, "Your ladyship, let this servant go cut their mouths." I quickly took a few deep breaths to stop Daisy. Causing trouble now would only make the rumors spread further. What good would that do? I turned to the little eunuch Cloud, standing nearby, and whispered, "You write down their names." When Dominic entered the Pure Heart Palace, I had just finished preparing my sleeping powder. "What is this?" Dominic's cold voice rang out, startling me and nearly causing me to drop the bowl of powder in my hand. I turned my head and saw Dominic standing right behind me, wearing a long black robe, looking no different from usual. In a fleeting moment, it was as if I saw Lord Harrison by the Lotus Pond that day. I unconsciously blurted out, "My lord." Only after speaking did I realize I had lost my manners again, but Dominic seemed not to mind my slip of the tongue. He just raised an eyebrow and looked at the bowl of medicine in my hand. I looked around once, then secretly moved closer to the window and lowered my voice, saying, "This is sleeping powder." Dominic's calm face suddenly cracked into a slight smile, the corners of his mouth lifting to reveal deep dimples on both sides. "Is it for me to drink?" His words fell into my ears like a blade slashing at my neck. I shrank my neck, hurriedly shaking my head. "No, it is not. This concubine would not dare. Even with 10 lives I would not dare to do that." I did not know if it was my imagination or reality, but even though there was a heater in the room, I still felt the surrounding air become colder. I pulled my clothes tighter and saw Dominic stepping closer, asking coldly, "Then who is it prepared for?" His voice was so cold it seemed to freeze me in place. I did not know if it was because of Dominic or the whispers of the maids in the afternoon, but my tears were about to spill over. I was incredibly ashamed. I told him the whole story. After recounting it, I felt even more embarrassed. Dominic pulled me onto his lap. He took a handkerchief and gently wiped the tears still lingering on my cheek. "I will immediately send those insolent ones to the Imperial dungeon." His voice was steely, making me tremble with fear. I had never seen him like this. Surely when he ordered Lucia to be sent to the Imperial dungeon, it was with a resolute decree like this. Although in my heart I felt those maids deserved punishment, they had only badmouthed me behind my back, which was different from Lucia's case. Moreover, I had devised a way to deal with them. If I let Dominic handle it, would my whole day of mixing sleeping powder not be in vain? Thinking this, I gently tugged at Dominic's sleeve, lightly shaking the bottle in my hand, and whispered, "Your Majesty, if you send them to the Imperial dungeon, would this sleeping powder of mine not be wasted?" My neighbor was an old pharmacist. This concubine often helped him work, so I learned a few tricks. This concubine believes that although it is just trivial knowledge, it is enough to make those maids lose a few layers of skin. Dominic took the bottle from my hand and placed it on the low table beside him, his gaze never leaving me. "They were not wrong. You are indeed a skilled potion maker." His voice was filled with an indescribable contemplativeness. "The things the older maid taught me last night were completely forgotten, because last night I only knew pain." Hugging Dominic tightly, no longer thinking of intimacy or serving, but disjointed sounds of "Sylvia" ringing from his mouth made my already confused body become even stiffer. I clearly mixed a light dose, absolutely not enough to drive people mad. Fortunately, Daisy said those maids had been properly arranged for in the palace. In the future, they would not have to worry about food or clothing. Only then did my heart feel somewhat relieved. But recalling the disjointed sounds of "Sylvia" whispered from his mouth last night, for the first time, I felt no interest in the meal before me. Fortunately, not long after Vanessa came to have breakfast with me, I asked softly, "Princess Nessa, do you know anyone named Sylvia?" Vanessa frowned, seeming to think for a long time, and finally shook her head firmly. This was within my expectations. For a person like Dominic, he would certainly hide his thoughts deep inside, letting no one see through them. I knew I was too ambitious. Human desire has no bottom. Initially, I entered the palace under a false identity, only hoping to live peacefully. After meeting Vanessa, I only hoped to be by her side forever. Then, when I fell for Lord Harrison, I never expected that Lord Chen was the emperor. That was already something I never dared to dream of. Yet now, I felt resentment when I heard Dominic call another person's name. I knew this emotion was wrong, but even so, I could not eat a single bite of rice. My action worried Vanessa. She picked up a piece of meat, placed it in my bowl, and said gently, "Eat meat. Eat meat to give birth to a baby." The chopsticks in my hand fell straight to the ground. At first I thought the name Sylvia was just a name Dominic accidentally uttered. But when he called that name over and over again, day after day, I could no longer deceive myself. Everyone said I monopolized the Emperor's favor, rising from consort to Lady Lin in just 1 month. But no one knew that Dominic called another person's name in his sleep, nor did anyone know why I was titled Lady Lin instead of Lady Q. I understood all these things, but I dared not ask, nor did I dare say anything. I only hoped to be with Vanessa during the day, and with Dominic at night. That was enough. But in the end, I could not endure it any longer. I loved Dominic so much. I could not ask why he deceived me about his surname, nor could I ask who Sylvia was. But I could not bear it when time and again, he called another person's name in my ear. Dominic also noticed my strangeness. He gently touched his cold hand to my cheek and asked, "Are you in pain?" That voice was full of caution, but I thought perhaps that caution was not for me, but for the person named Sylvia. I bit my lip, trying to hold back the tears that were about to spill, pretending not to care, and asked gently, Sylvia, the person the Emperor loves?" Dominic turned over to lie down on the bed, not responding. He propped his head on his hand, his eyes seeming to contain myriads of stars. I saw in his eyes a look of amusement, as if my question had touched his heart. Dominic reached out to gently stroke the wet strands of hair on my forehead, then nodded. My face, which was trying to appear calm, suddenly collapsed. So, he truly had someone in his heart. Unexpectedly, hearing him admit it himself made me feel so painful. Then why does the Emperor not welcome that person into the palace? I was not sure what I was looking for. Perhaps I just hoped for a reason to let go completely. Dominic's hand touched my cheek. I did not dodge, just looked straight into his eyes, which were gradually filling with a smile. His hand finally covered my eyes as he chuckled softly. "Do not look at me like that." A moment later, he removed his hand from my eyes. His cold fingers tapped lightly on the tip of my nose, then he smiled softly. "As that person not right here in the palace, right before my eyes." I clearly understood these words, but when put together, they became something I could not explain. I was stunned, only able to look at Dominic and stutter, this concubine is not Sylvia." Dominic dropped his hand, pulling me into his embrace. Before I could react, I heard him whisper, "That name was given to you by me. This concubine already has a name." I thought this must be a random remark by Dominic, just like when he claimed his surname was Chen. But he tightened his embrace, forcing me to press my face against his chest, hearing every strong heartbeat. "My woman cannot bear the surname Q," Dominic said. His words astonished me. I did not know whether to refute or retreat. My heart beat chaotically. I could not distinguish if the heartbeat was mine or his anymore. What did the Emperor mean? Did he know from the start that I was not Clara, and thus gave me a new name to save me? Or was he angry because I dared to impersonate someone else? I rolled my eyes, thinking the second possibility was perhaps higher. "Your Majesty, this concubine's name is Clara." I decided to pretend not to understand his meaning. Dominic pulled me out of his arms. I saw the corners of his eyes still carried a gentle smile, looking nothing like he was blaming me. In the 36th year of the Yuanhe era, Amara Lin was born in King Village, East Hamlet. The family had a younger brother. I was trying to make an excuse, but was there any chance left? "Clara is Clara, and you are you," Dominic said. "From the moment your father sold you to Magistrate Chu, you were no longer Amara Lin. But since I met you, you are no longer Clara either." Dominic moved his fingers to gently stroke my face, but I had no reaction. He called softly, "Amara. Amara. Your father thought you should not exist in this world, but I find it truly fortunate that you came. Fortunate that your father sold you to Magistrate Q. Fortunate that Magistrate Q sent you into the palace. Fortunate that you met Vanessa. And finally, fortunate that I met you." My heart pounded. I looked at Dominic, feeling as if I were about to be swept into his deep, emotional eyes. Dominic lowered his head to kiss my forehead lightly, then said, "From now on, you will be called Sylvia Lin. Lin, like your brother Dorian Lin's name. And Sylvia, meaning the forest, representing my adoration for you. I told you this name on the night you first served me, only you had fallen asleep then. Today I ask you again, do you like this name?" I nodded slightly, not knowing whether to laugh or cry at this moment. "I like it. Of course, I like it very much." The fact that Magistrate Chu was promoted to prefect did not surprise me. He was a good person, a good official, and good officials would sooner or later be promoted. But Daisy did not think so. There is no such thing as being promoted so quickly. Surely the Emperor bestowed this favor out of respect for your ladyship, Daisy said while arranging jade flowers in a box, talking to me. Although I knew Dominic treated me very well, I knew clearly that Magistrate Chu's promotion was not because of me. Daisy did not understand the situation, but Dominic knew well that Magistrate Chu was not my biological father. Not pursuing his crime of deception was already a leniency. How could there be a promotion of several ranks at once? Although I said that, at noon when Dominic came to my palace for the meal, I still could not help myself. I picked up a piece of meat for Vanessa, then placed another piece in Dominic's bowl. I heard Magistrate Chu has been promoted. Daisy and the other maid, Tilly, who were serving food, were both startled, their hands shaking slightly. They had feared Dominic for a long time but still could not correct that habit. Dominic did not mind. He simply picked up the meat I gave him and ate it immediately, not even bothering to look up. Men, he did a good job. I looked at Daisy, saying silently in my heart, see, it was not because of me. Days passed just like that. Another year went by. In the palace, I was still the only concubine. Every day, the meals consisted of Dominic, Vanessa, and me. Ordinary but full of warmth. Gradually, gossip from the imperial court reached my ears. Many old officials advised Dominic to expand the harem, both to have heirs and to consolidate the empire. I knew they only wanted to send their clan's daughters in because they saw I was still in the palace. Dominic knew too, so every time, he refused firmly. Because of that, I received the title of a fox spirit who harmed the country. After that, in front of my pure heart palace, there were often new maids getting lost. They were scolded by Daisy, then would secretly peek inside before hurriedly leaving. Everyone wanted to see what the fox spirit harming the country looked like. I lay on the chaise lounge. Lately, I had become increasingly lazy. Daisy said I had been spoiled too much by Dominic, becoming weaker and more fragile than before, no longer like when I was at the Jade Spring Palace. I glanced at Daisy. You are no less yourself, becoming more and more devoid of propriety. Daisy covered her mouth and giggled. My heart suddenly felt strangely peaceful. The scene right now did not resemble the deep and treacherous harem rumored by the world at all, but rather as if I were just a legitimate wife in a wealthy family, loved and pampered by my husband. The only thing was that Vanessa had been staring at my belly for a very long time. I glanced at Daisy, then turned to ask Vanessa, Nessa, what are you looking at? Vanessa was about to turn 9. Her face had matured much compared to 2 years ago. Although she still had the innocent look of a child, I could easily see her city, toppling beauty. Vanessa propped her chin on her hand, staring at my belly, and sighed, they all say sister-in-law is an enchantress harming the country. My heart tightened. Perhaps the people round Vanessa needed to be purged soon. I heard that as long as sister-in-law gives birth to a little prince, you will no longer be called an enchantress. Vanessa sighed and continued. But the prince is so big, and your belly is so small. How can the prince fit into your belly? Perhaps besides finding a teacher for Vanessa, I also needed to find a female tutor. I waited until evening to talk about this with Dominic. Hearing this, Dominic did not say yes or no, just looked at me with a gaze that made me feel uncomfortable. A long while later, he reached out to lift my chin, rubbing the top of my head gently. After a long time, I heard his voice coming from above my head. So when will you give birth to a prince? My whole body stiffened. Perhaps he had realized long ago that I was not pregnant but did not scold or force me. Feeling my nose sting, I leaned against his chest and rubbed gently, hiding my head in his arms, choking back tears as I said, wait until Nessa is a bit older. Old enough not to be as fragile as a child. Old enough for me not to fear that life is fragile anymore. Dominic patted my head gently and replied, all right. Not long after, I heard the news that Magistrate Chu had been promoted again. This time straight to the position of Prime Minister. Rumor had it that he had solved a major case. Dominic, in front of the civil and military officials, praised Magistrate Chu as worthy of leading the 100 officials. This promotion was more than a year since the last one. If it were just a few ranks, it would not be too fast, but rising immediately to lead the 100 officials was something even I found hard to believe, let alone others. Dominic was inherently deep and never did anything without reason. After that incident, no one dared to say I was an enchantress harming the country anymore. Truly, no one dared to call me that. Half a month later, I would welcome the grand ceremony to be crowned empress. The daughter of the prime minister leading the court, becoming the mother of the nation, was more suitable than ever. Looking at the person in front of me, meticulously drawing my eyebrows, I thought again that he had never done anything without a basis, except for meeting me. Side story: Dominic in the 17th year of the Yuancheng era, I was born in the Moon Chamber Palace, closest to the Celestial Palace. In the 23rd year of Yuancheng, my mother, the consort, was falsely accused of adultery with a guard. That day, just after the noon meal was served, 3 feet of white silk were sent to the Moon Chamber Palace. I was confined in the Moon Chamber Palace for half a month, then taken by consort Layla to be raised in the residence palace. Your mother was wronged. That was the sentence consort Layla often said to me, but she only hoped I would grow up safely and live a smooth life, never seeking to clear my mother's name. No one could clear her name. I knew my mother was wronged. The only daughter of the great General Yuan, who once stayed up all night to embroider a fragrant sachet for emperor, how could she commit adultery with a guard? Such a loyal person was branded with that cruel crime. How could I not clear her name? Why could no one clear her name? I determined I must clear her name for her. Consort Layla, out of friendship with my mother, treated me very thoughtfully. But that meager favor did not make my life in the palace any easier. I was like a dog that anyone could beat. Outside, my clan was considered rebellious, and my mother bore the crime of adultery. Although I held the title of prince, my life was more miserable than a eunuch's. But consort Layla was not like my mother. Without love, there would be countless schemes. The year I was 10, consort Layla, who is currently favored, gave birth to a little princess. Consort Layla and I both thought it would be a little prince. Therefore, when the midwife brought the tiny baby before me, my cold face became even colder. A little princess was useless, and so small and weak, I had no ability to protect her. But the emperor was overjoyed. He named the child Vanessa. He broke the rule and approved my request to enter the Imperial Academy to study, something consort Layla had begged for so long but failed to achieve. Looking at the child's small, wrinkled face, I thought perhaps she was not as useless as I imagined. Everyone was afraid of me, saying my cold face looked like Yama, the king of hell. Whenever other concubines brought their children out, the kids would cry in fear upon seeing me. But the little princess was not afraid. I did not know when she learned to speak, but now she always crawled on the ground calling for me. I saw the small figure crawling closer and closer to me. I sighed, put down my brush, and dipped my hand into the basin of water nearby to wash it clean. The guard beside me, named Gareth Chen, stepped forward to pick the child up and said, "Call him royal brother." I said sternly. The little princess waved her hands, giggling, becoming even happier. Brother. No matter what, she only called me brother. The little princess continued like that. Every time she called, it was brother. More and more I realized I was wrong. Saying this child was useless was my mistake. The little princess was like a brilliant sunflower, shining so brightly that everyone had to love her. The more the emperor loved her, the more tolerant he became towards me, no longer guarding against me. Thanks to that, I could freely do what I desired. But I never thought that a similar tragedy could happen a second time. That year was the 31st year of Yuancheng. I had just returned from the Imperial Academy after class, intending to return to the residence palace for the noon meal. Before entering, I heard noise from inside. When I stepped across the threshold, the scene before my eyes made my heart tighten. In front of me lay a small body, still wearing the pale green dress I saw her wearing when I left in the morning. Only now, the hem of the dress was dyed red with blood, the original color unrecognizable. Everything before my eyes made me dare not approach. Your Highness, come quickly to see the princess." The maid Tilly hugged the little princess tightly, crying until her eyes were swollen. I almost rushed over, my fingers trembling as I received Vanessa's small body, which had fainted. "What happened?" I asked, my voice deep and suppressed. The Empress said her ladyship consort Layla behaved improperly and ordered someone to arrest her. The princess refused to leave, ran after them, and fell down the stairs. Every word Tilly spoke was like a needle piercing straight into my ears. When the royal physician arrived, my robe was soaked with blood from the back of Vanessa's head. The physician arrived in time to save her life, but Vanessa would never grow up again. The day I stepped into the imperial dungeon, consort Layla had passed away. She drank the poisoned wine granted by the Empress to preserve the royal dignity. She passed away on the 5th day I stayed by Vanessa's bed. That day, the Emperor, who had been on an inspection tour, also returned to the palace. When the emperor returned, the first thing he did was to judge me for trespassing into the imperial dungeon, confining me to the resident's palace. He mentioned nothing about consort Layla, nor did he come to see Vanessa once. Everything was no different from 8 years ago. It was as if in this world, there had never been a noble consort or a consort Layla. In the palace, no one dared to utter a word of gossip, as if just mentioning it would dirty their ears and mouths. Just like 8 years ago. Yesterday, she was the emperor's favored consort. Today, she had become a corpse unable to enter the royal tomb. Was the emperor on that high throne heartless, or was it all part of his plan? I looked at Vanessa, still unconscious on the bed, my hand tightly gripping the sword. From now on, besides Vanessa I had no kin left. In the 32nd year of Yuanqing, I led Vanessa and the troops of the foreign clan to besiege the royal palace. I knew it. I should have killed you along with that woman. I should not have been soft-hearted. The emperor sat on the throne, pointing at me and screaming in despair. That is right, you should not have been soft-hearted. When you conspired with the empress to cast that filthy crime upon my mother to consolidate your throne, you should have killed me too. But you did not. Instead, you continued to set a trap for consort Layla. I threw Prince Stephen Ling's head in front of him, kneeling down to look straight into his eyes. Your beloved son hanged himself early when he heard the news of my arrival. I feared you would not make it in time to see him, so I brought his head to you. The emperor stared at the head, his lips trembling. Stephen, my son. My mother once devoted herself to him, defying her clan's opposition to marry him, helping him sit on the throne, helping him stabilize the dynasty. She gave him everything she could. She accepted him making another person empress, listening to hypocritical excuses. She accepted letting Prince Stephen be the crown prince. She never complained a word, nor did she ever wish for me to sit on that crown prince's seat. I looked straight at him, my words steely. You were afraid because of your incompetence. You never loved my mother, yet you used love to bind her. You did not harm my mother enough, you wanted to harm consort Layla too. Whether it is me or Vanessa, in your eyes, we are not worth a corner of Prince Stephen. In the end, I had no energy left to overturn the past. When I ascended the throne, the first thing was to force him to write an abdication edict. Sitting on the throne that I loathed to the bone, there was only one thing I truly wanted, to protect Vanessa and, incidentally, protect this empire. Outside the palace, no one knew about the forced abdication. There was only a rumor that the crown prince had died suddenly, and the old emperor, overwhelmed by grief, handed power to me. Having just sat on the throne, the old officials began plotting to send their women into my harem. Day after day, year after year, seeing I was unmoved, they also gave up. I never thought I would add any woman to my harem until I met a girl covered in mud appearing before me. Occasionally, I wore civilian clothes and went to sit under the lotus canopy by the small pavilion at the lotus pond, a place only Vanessa and I knew. Even Tilly had never been led there by Vanessa. When Vanessa said she had brought a sister, I was indeed a bit surprised. But then I felt this girl must not be ordinary to make Vanessa soften like that. But when I saw that petite girl hugging a pile of lotus pods and slipping into the lake, I knew her name was Clara, a strange name to me. Clara, covered in mud, still clutching the lotus pods, looked up at me and said, "My lord, please do not mind. This servant will pretend never to have heard this address of brother. Please also pretend the princess's address of sister never existed." Her tone was calm but mixed with a bit of adorableness that nearly made me laugh. But looking into her bright eyes, I suddenly thought if I revealed my identity now, I would surely see a look of horror appear in her eyes. In the palace, whenever maids saw me, they all had that terrified look, so I decided to temporarily play the role of the lord she mentioned. As long as I did not admit it, it would not be a lie. The maids beside Vanessa, apart from Tilly, each had their own schemes. This Clara naturally could not be entirely innocent toward Vanessa. I would not overlook anyone with intentions to harm Vanessa, but unexpectedly when I sent people to investigate, I discovered a major fact. Amara. I opened the booklet in my hand. The first line struck my eyes. Eunuch Dexter, standing beside me, whispered, "She is the daughter of a farmer. I was born as an abandoned person, just like her name, Amara. A child born who should not have existed. Her mother kept her alive, but that name seemed to have determined her fate." When I saw Amara and Vanessa laughing happily just because of some mud, I could not help doubting if the people sent to investigate had made a mistake. How could a person bearing a name that should not exist keep such a bright smile? She should have been like me, carrying the power of resentment inside. Could she really save Vanessa? Vanessa squatted in front of 2 mud statues, asking innocently, "Brother, is that sister or sister-in-law? If sister were sister-in-law and sister-in-law were sister, how nice that would be." I glanced at the 2 mud statues. One of them really looked like Amara. Hearing Vanessa's reason, my heart suddenly went cold. True, there were always foolish people thinking that because Vanessa was simple, she could be easily exploited. Then I coldly watched Vanessa burrow into Amara's arms, using her familiar trick, looking pitiful. Will sister agree to be Nessa's sister-in-law? Amara was a bit confused, finally only able to reply gently, "Whatever the princess wants this servant to do, this servant will do." Those words sounded as if she were forced to rush into a dangerous place, making my heart suddenly feel uncomfortable. For the rest of the time, I could not turn another page of my book. Suddenly, a soft voice rang from behind. "My lord, those words just now were only to coax the princess. Please forgive this servant for the offense. Do not take them to heart." I hugged Vanessa, hearing the small voice echoing. Of course, I knew she was just coaxing Vanessa. How would a tiny maid with the crime of deceiving the sovereign dare to think of marrying me? I gave a soft hum, no longer wanting to look at the little maid again. The little maid timidly asked, "My lord, may this servant presumptuously ask your name and position in the palace?" I just thought to myself, if I told her my name, would a little maid like her dare to call it? "Fine," I answered decisively. "Me name is Harrison, serving at the Celestial Palace." After speaking, Harrison, who was hiding behind the curtain, trembled slightly. This was nothing strange, as his identity being temporarily borrowed by me was also his blessing. Amara treated Vanessa very well, to the point I felt it was strange. Because I could not find any reason for her to be good to Vanessa. Unlike the maids who used to deceive Vanessa that she could not have a sister-in-law, many maids approaching Vanessa had their own agendas. But this little maid, Amara, seemed to have no purpose and treated Vanessa sincerely. That made me momentarily not want to pursue her crime of deceiving the sovereign anymore. Thinking that my identity was also fake, I told myself we could consider it even. Eunuch Dexter said lately I liked going to the pavilion more. He did not know Vanessa needed a companion. As a brother, naturally, I had to spend more time by her side. It was just unclear what was wrong with this Amara. Every time she met me, she smiled brighter than the last. I heard there were people secretly saying I was heroically handsome, but no one dared to say it straight to my face. Could it be because she is about to become a sister-in-law, so sister is happy to meet brother? Vanessa asked, making Amara glance at me then shyly nod. I did not understand why my heart suddenly felt at ease. Even the book in my hand became much easier to read. In the days before, when Vanessa wanted Amara to be a sister-in-law, she acted as if she were about to be sacrificed. Now, she clearly showed the shyness of a young maiden. Indeed, women truly are fickle. "Lord Harrison works at the Celestial Palace, it must be very hard?" Amara asked. I suddenly realized I had stopped reading, my eyes still fixed on one spot without reading another line. I replied indifferently, then turned the page hurriedly. I wonder if Lord Harrison has a family yet. The book I intended to read would probably not be finished today. I looked up at her, seeing only a bright smile like the sun sparkling in her eyes. Beside her, Vanessa was still diligently painting. The scene before my eyes was peaceful and warm. I, who never liked to guess, at this moment felt that if Amara truly became Vanessa's sister-in-law, it would be a very pleasant thing. When I looked at Amara, a feeling of gentleness rose in my heart, so much that even I recognized it. I heard my own voice ring out. "It is coming soon." If I wanted, I could have it immediately, but many things need to be done slowly. When Magistrate Thomas sent a letter into the palace, I was approving memorials, which was giving me a headache. A small letter from an official to a minor maid was not a big deal, but it was presented right in front of me. I glanced at Eunuch Dexter, who was bowing beside me. "You have too much free time." Eunuch Dexter smiled wryly and said, "This is what this servant must do." I threw the memorial in my hand to him, thinking to myself, he was getting more and more discerning lately. Dorian is dead. That was the information in the letter. Dorian was Amara's younger brother. I knew this already. His existence for Amara was like Vanessa's for me. I did not even have time to change my clothes. I just put down the memorial and immediately ran to the Jade Spring Palace. I did not know what I could do when I got there, I just thought I should go and see. Before I reached the Jade Spring Palace, a maid bumped straight into me. She looked up, her face covered in tears. That image made my heart ache. What happened? I took a handkerchief from my robe intending to wipe her tears. But Amara did not take the handkerchief. She hugged my waist tightly, buried her face in my chest and burst into tears. My brother is gone. He said he would wait for me to come back. He promised he would wait for me. I did not know what to do other than to let her tears and snot soak into my dragon robe. Only her heart-wrenching sobs, which felt like someone was clawing at my heart, pained me so much that I could only gently pat her back. I hoped to soothe the trembling of her small body. You still have me. You still have Vanessa. I repeated this sentence over and over, only hoping those words could be deeply engraved in her heart. I did not know if it was because she was too tired from crying, but Amara fell asleep in my arms. I glanced at Gareth Chen, who was standing hidden behind the screen, then gently lifted Amara. Gareth Chen had always been very efficient. On the way carrying Amara back to her room, not even an ant was in sight. I placed Amara on the bed, gently covering her with the blanket, and said softly, "From now on, do not casually cry in another man's arms." Recently, the Xiongnu troops in the north had shown signs of disturbance. I originally only intended to go to the front line to stabilize the army's morale, and on the way back, stop by Jiangnan to discipline those officials who only reported trivial matters. I never expected that trip would last for more than 2 months. Vanessa had Tilly to attend to her, and now Amara was added. I was not too worried. It was just that since that night, I had not had the chance to see Amara again. I did not know if she would blame me for deceiving her after finding out I was the emperor. I had thought that perhaps because I was the emperor, she would be afraid and avoid me. Or maybe she would be like other maids, trying to win my favor. But the first thing I heard when I returned to the palace was Amara's words. It was this servant's carelessness. "Please punish me, Lord Chen." Although it was an apology, her voice carried a bit of cuteness that stunned me. I did not know if it was because she did not recognize me as the person from that day, or because of her shy, feminine appearance. Not seeing her for 2 months, Amara before me seemed even more beautiful. Every gesture had a bit more grace. She became so charming that I could not take my eyes off her. Just then, Vanessa threw herself into my arms, saying happily, "Brother, you have been gone for so long. Sister and I both missed you very much." Hearing those words, my heart stirred. I felt Vanessa was truly a gift sent from heaven. "Is that so? Your sister missed me too." I picked Vanessa up and looked towards Amara. She lowered her head slightly, but I could clearly see a gentle smile on her lips. Her dimples appeared, full of charm. Her face flushed red, the blush spreading to her earlobes. And then I heard her small, soft voice, "Yes, that is right." I must have been enchanted by something, because in that moment all the sophistication I always maintained vanished. I suddenly understood my mother's feelings back then, when she sat under the candlelight, stitch by stitch, embroidering that small sachet for my father. Vanessa leaned against my chest, using a voice just loud enough for me to hear, and asked softly, "Brother, why does sister call you Lord Chen?" I quickened my pace a few steps, putting more distance between Amara and me, then whispered to Vanessa, "Nessa, be good. If you want sister to be your sister-in-law, do not tell sister that brother is the emperor." I did not know if Vanessa fully understood my words. She just squirmed slightly in my arms and whispered, "Sister must be my sister-in-law." I nodded slightly, pleased with Vanessa's reaction. I knew that one day Amara would discover I was the emperor. But before that happened, I needed to think of a perfect plan. After a trip to Jiangnan, the memorials presented were finally no longer trivial matters. However, that also meant I hardly had free time to spend with Vanessa and Amara. The name Amara did not sound good, nor did it have a good meaning. How could it be the name of an empress? I had to give her a more beautiful, more fortunate name. As I wrote the 2 characters, Sylvia Lin, over and over on the imperial paper, Eunuch Dexter entered and asked, "Your Majesty, should the decoration of the royal gardens this year follow Princess Vanessa's preferences like every year?" I nodded, then added, "This year, pay more attention to the food preparation." Looking at the words, Sylvia Lin, on the page, I could not help smiling. Both Sylvia and Vanessa were very similar in their love for food. Sylvia Lin. Sylvia. No name was more beautiful, and nothing was happier than this. Vanessa's birthday had always been celebrated in the royal gardens, and this year was no exception. The only difference was that this time, behind Vanessa, there was a little maid with shifty eyes darting back and forth. I saw Amara, or rather, Sylvia now, looking around while secretly taking pastries from Vanessa, and I could not help but laugh. Clearly, this year was different from previous years. Vanessa, as always, hugged a pile of gifts and ran quickly towards the Jade Spring Palace, with Sylvia following closely behind. Today, Sylvia did not look at me even once. It made me suddenly feel that letting her discover my identity on her own seemed to be an extremely difficult task. For Vanessa's birthday gifts in previous years, I always woke up early and had them sent. This year, I waited until late at night. After bathing and changing into a new robe, I tucked the gift into my sleeve and headed towards the Jade Spring Palace. I stood there for a long time, then Sylvia walked out of Vanessa's chamber. I exclaimed, "I forgot to give Vanessa her gift." I calmly took a small, prepared box from my sleeve, as if I had truly forgotten to bring the gift for Vanessa and was only just delivering it now. Before I could say anything else, Sylvia's hand touched the lapel of my robe. If I had not quickly come to my senses, Gareth Chen, standing nearby, would have surely rushed up to intervene. The part of the robe her hand touched seemed to lose all meaning. Perhaps when I changed, I had not adjusted it properly, so it loosened on the way here. Sylvia was startled, her hands trembling as she clutched my robe, her face flushing red. This servant was only afraid my lord would catch a cold," she stammered. I understood. How could a tiny maid like her dare to be improper with me? But I deliberately wanted to tease her a bit. Unexpectedly, she showed no resistance. On the contrary, it was as if I had just flirted with her, making her shyly turn and run away. I watched as her fingers brushed past my hand when she avoided the small box I was holding. It felt as if a little warmth from her hand still lingered. I could not suppress the smile on my lips. Hearing eunuch Dexter report that rumors were spreading in the Jade Spring Palace that I had fallen for a maid. This rumor was started by a cleaning maid. "This servant will immediately handle this matter," Dexter said with a determined look, as if he were about to punish the most serious offender. My hand paused over the brush. I gently propped my chin and turned to look at him. "Handle what?" Dexter immediately knelt down. "Handle the maid who spread the rumor, Your Majesty." I bowed my head, my voice dropping along with the brushstroke. "What rumor?" "The servants in the palace are gossiping that Your Majesty has fallen for a maid in the Jade Spring Palace," Dexter said, bowing his head low, his voice full of worry. I turned my head, no longer looking at him. My voice and hand stopped at the same time. "Rumor? That is the truth, clearer than gold. How can it be called a rumor?" Dexter hurriedly bowed his head to accept the blame, then left. He only returned at noon after completing his task. Recently, Vanessa told me that all the gifts I bestowed had been given to Sylvia, not a single one left behind. Hearing that, I was relieved, knowing that since she had accepted the gifts, everything would be easier to resolve. But lately, Sylvia seemed to be acting strangely. Her small ears would occasionally turn red when she blurted out, "Lord Harrison, I wonder if you intend to take a concubine." I was painting. My hand trembled, ruining the artwork. Looking at her, I was not sure what was meant by taking a concubine. I could not immediately make her empress, and if not empress, it could only be the position of a concubine. However, luckily, she turned her attention to the ruined painting and did not ask further. I did not want to put her in the position of a concubine. I did not want her to be the one to bear so many responsibilities. On the 6th day of the 12th lunar month, I chose an auspicious day from the Astronomical Bureau for the wedding ceremony. Dexter reported that everything was ready. Only then did I issue the imperial edict I had prepared long ago. I was also very worried, not knowing if Sylvia would faint from fear when she received the edict. I also did not know if she would blame me for hiding it when she discovered I was the emperor. Therefore, that evening, I deliberately entered the bedchamber later than usual. When I entered, I saw Sylvia curled up on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling, not daring to move. Only when I approached did she hurriedly burrow into the covers. "My lord," she stammered, her eyes red, like a little rabbit trying to hide in its burrow. The sight was truly adorable. I came closer, gently pulling the blanket off her face, only to see her flushed face and the clear traces of tears. Since that day, I had never seen Sylvia cry again, and thankfully so, because her tears, like fire burning my heart, were the most lethal weapon in the world. When I saw the tear stains on her cheeks, I only wished to quickly wipe them away. Just as I was about to offer a few words of comfort, I heard her small voice from under the covers, "My lord, go quickly. What if the emperor discovers you?" Only then did I understand why Vanessa loved Sylvia so much. Did she really think just anyone could casually walk into the bedchamber of the celestial palace? Sylvia did not know why I was laughing. Her eyes were full of worry. If it were not for the fact that she was wearing nothing, she surely would have stood up and chased me out. I gently touched her nose, smiled, and said, "I am not the Lord. I am the Emperor." Hearing this, Sylvia's eyes widened as if she had just heard the most unbelievable thing in the world. I smiled, slowly removed my outer robe, and lay down beside her, gently lifting the blanket. I never imagined there would be a day when Sylvia would lie beside me, gently leaning on my shoulder. Just by tilting my head, I could clearly see the soft strands of hair straying by her ear. "I never told you I was the Emperor, but you also deceived me. So we are even," I said in a soft voice, my eyes gazing at the bed canopy. I continued with the words I had prepared earlier. "But the name Amara is not good. I have given you a new name, Sylvia Lynn. Do you like it?" I waited for a long time but heard no answer, only the sound of steady, light breathing on my neck. I turned my head and saw Sylvia, who had been stunned just moments ago, now deep in sleep. Her long eyelashes rested softly under her eyes, with a faint hint of dark circles, looking as if she had not had a good night's sleep in a long time. If not for being so exhausted, she surely would not have fallen asleep at such a crucial moment. It had been 12 years since my mother's death. I had not felt such peace in a long time. Looking at Sylvia's peaceful face as she slept, I suddenly realized that her coming to my side, even if by fate's design, was the greatest blessing heaven had bestowed upon me. I gently reached out, tracing her smooth face with my fingertips, feeling an unusual sense of peace. "Sylvia, thank you." I did not know if Sylvia heard me. She just whimpered softly, like a small cat, lying beside me. I wrapped my arms around her, gently stroking her smooth black hair, and contentedly closed my eyes. Soon, Sylvia would be my empress. Someone had brought this matter to my attention, but I was unaware. So when I saw Sylvia carefully fiddling with a small bottle, I felt it was very novel. Sylvia cautiously explained to me that the bottle contained sleeping powder she had just mixed. If anyone had said such words to me before, they would have been dragged to the imperial dungeon and punished. But when Sylvia said it, I felt strangely at ease. I had never felt so happy being thoughtfully treated by someone. "Who is this medicine for?" I asked. When Sylvia hurriedly explained it was not for me, I felt a chill run down my spine. I had already decided in my heart, no matter whose name she mentioned, that person would not live through the night. I never expected that the maids who were once so scared they dared not breathe loudly in the harem would now dare to bring trivial gossip to my bed. If Sylvia had not pleaded for them, I would have certainly made them remember what kind of emperor I was. Looking at Sylvia's small, fair hands tugging at my robe, and then at her moist eyes, I only felt my throat go dry. To put Sylvia at ease, I spared those who did not know their place. But the sleeping powder Sylvia mixed was indeed a bargain for them. I never thought intimacy could be something that made people so entranced. Looking at Sylvia lying beside me, frowning slightly in her sleep, my heart was filled with an unprecedented satisfaction. I wiped the sweat from her forehead, gently pulled up the blanket, put on my robe, and left the bed without a misstep. I gave Sylvia's sleeping powder to Gareth Chen, confident he would bring me a perfect result. Except for their lives, everything else had to be erased. After that, I immediately promoted Sylvia to lady. This news caused quite a storm in the court. Of course, those old, stubborn officials all thought Sylvia's status was not noble enough. Some even went to investigate her background before Gareth Chen could act. Thomas cleverly arranged everything, leaving no loopholes, which made me very satisfied. I was pleased with Thomas's ability. It seemed everything was proceeding according to my expectations. However, as each day passed, I noticed Sylvia becoming more melancholic. Although she tried to hide it, I could feel the unease and sorrow in her moist eyes. Those tears seemed to seep deep into my storm-weathered heart like countless needles piercing it. "Sylvia, are you the one the Emperor loves?" Sylvia asked, her face looking as if she were about to be sacrificed, her voice full of sobs. I suddenly realized, so it was because of this. And perhaps I had forgotten that night she had fallen asleep and not heard my words. I immediately turned on my side, gently stroking the strands of hair damp with sweat on her forehead, and nodded slightly, trying to suppress the smile at the corners of my lips. "Then why has the Emperor not welcomed her into the palace?" Sylvia tried even harder to choke back her sobs. If it were before, I might have felt heartbroken. But at this moment, I could not help but laugh out loud. I gently tapped her cute nose and said, "Is that person not right here before my eyes?" Seeing Sylvia's dazed look, I felt that if I did not explain clearly, she would definitely think I was lying. Finally, I said, "Therefore from now on, you will be called Sylvia Lynn." Lynn from your brother, Dorian, and Sylvia, meaning forest, representing my adoration for you. I told you this name on the first night you served me, only you fell asleep that night. Today, I ask you again. Sylvia listened, stunned, her eyes filled with a smile that seemed to contain the entire starry sky. I like it. 1,000 likes, 10,000 likes. Her voice still carried the sound of sobs. I could only smile. Truly, my little fool. I kissed her forehead lightly and whispered, I also like it. 1,000 times, 10,000 times like it. After that, when Thomas met me, he knelt on the ground, trembling, and exclaimed, Your Majesty, please forgive this minister's crime. I beg you to spare this minister's family. He said that Clara was a filial child, that all the deception was his idea. He begged the emperor to punish only him. I looked at him and said only, She is now called Sylvia Lynn. Thomas was stunned for a moment, then bowed his head repeatedly. This minister deserves death. I shook my head slightly. You dared to plead for Sylvia Lynn. That means you do not deserve death so much. I spoke to Thomas and slowly revealed my plan to him. Thomas understood my meaning, showing his willingness to follow all my arrangements without any objection. After that, everything proceeded smoothly. He was promoted smoothly. Initially, I thought if he was not capable, bestowing a title in name only would be enough of a favor. But unexpectedly, with his talent, his previous position was indeed too small for him. With his ability, it would not be long before I had an excuse to use Sylvia Lynn's noble family status to make her empress. I looked at the person lying beside me, her eyes shining with a gentle smile as she looked at me. I remembered that day, with that same radiant smile, she had asked me if Lord Harrison had a wife at home. Now, I do. Sylvia's journey illustrates that gentle resilience is a quiet superpower. Born unwanted, she conquered fate through manipulation, but through the purity of her heart. Her genuine kindness became her armor, attracting a love that healed old wounds and redefined her worth. This teaches us that true love is a sanctuary where we are fully seen and cherished. Even in the coldest places, a warm heart can bloom, turning a tragic beginning into a destiny filled with hope and enduring happiness. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.